Welcome to the Betty Intagliata Lecture Series, sponsored by the Venice Area Historical Society. Permanent funding for the Betty Intagliata Lecture Series is provided by the Bill Jervey Jr. Charitable Foundation. Now, Mrs. Potter Palmer in 1918 and her thoughts on the current situation in the Sarasota district of Manatee County, Florida. Hello, I am Bertha Matilda Honore Palmer, known to most of society as Mrs. Potter Palmer. I am a Chicagoan who has made Sarasota her beloved second home these past 8 years, since 1910. And I've been asked to speak with you today on my thoughts about the Sarasota district breaking away from Manatee County to become self-governing. My late husband, Potter Palmer, was a land developer of some scope and skill. And although I was 20-some years younger than he, became interested and have learned to be perhaps a little adept at the family business. You see, my father, Henri Honore, who moved our family to Chicago when I was only 5, he himself was a land developer, and from my youngest years, he encouraged me to understand all of the factors that made for success in this field. And of course, my education continued when my wedding gift from Potter, the Palmer House Hotel, burned in the Great Chicago Fire. Oh, that was a calamity and a challenge to rebuild most of the city. Potter lost 32 buildings just on State Street. Why, 1/3 of the 300,000 people who lived in Chicago in 1871 were left homeless by that fire. The rebuilding was an experience that has actually guided me now in my older years. One of the first buildings that we rebuilt was, of course, my Palmer House Hotel. We moved in, as was the fashion for young couples in those days, to live under a hotel until they started a family. Well, in fact, my sons, Honore and Potter II, were born when we lived there. But when the boys became old enough to tease the hotel maids, to run through the halls, to slide on the marble floors, Potter decided he needed to build us a house. Oh, and what a home. He had budgeted $90,000. By the time we were finished, the home cost over $1 million. It was called by the Chicagoans the Castle, and I had a grand time choosing its furnishings on my many trips abroad and choosing paintings and statuary and so on. While all the time, of course, I was seeing after my civic and my social obligations in Chicago and watching over and enjoying my greatest treasure, my family. Yes, indeed, I'm sure you know that I have had a life full of glamour, riches, and jewels, my collection of art, my fame as the president of the Board of Lady Managers for the Columbian Exposition, and my life in Bar Harbor and Newport and Paris, and as a member of the Court of St. James in London with dear King Edward VII. All of that may seem a bit frivolous to you Floridians, who are so much more down to earth. Now, I know that you don't believe everything you read. I learned early in life that I must be of service as well. When the Palmer House Hotel burned, my husband and I didn't have the money for the next quarter's tax bill. We had to rebuild quickly, and I worked alongside Potter and gained insight into the challenges of the citizens of our city. I realized that not all of us are as fortunate as we, and that so many women toiled under the twin burdens of society's expectations of them as wives and mothers, and the lack of opportunity caused by poverty. As a founding member of the Chicago Women's Club, I lobbied for fair treatment of women and children, not only by society, but also by our city government. As a close friend and supporter of Jane Addams, whose Hull House was Chicago's first social settlement, I understood and saw firsthand the struggles of families to shelter, feed, and educate their children. I am an avid supporter of women's rights, and I count myself a proud member of the Women's Trade Union League. I may be seen by the press and the public as just a decorative figure, but I am so much more. I am an engaged and energetic producer wherever I go. My good works, my annual charity ball in Chicago, my setting the taste and style of society, all that and more has led the press to call me the Queen of Chicago. My dear husband Potter went to his heavenly reward in 1902, leaving me a widow of 53. His wish was that I would, with our 2 sons, continue the family tradition of land development. But for many years, I simply didn't have the heart to continue. That led to my home in Paris, my townhouse in London, and my friendship with Edward VII. He taught me to shoot skeet, to play golf, and he freely admitted that I was his favorite bridge partner. But eventually, I knew I had to honor my husband's wishes and see that our family legacy was secure. I decided to invest in land that I could shape, could guide into productivity, could develop and grow. So why, I'm sure you're thinking, why Sarasota? Why did a wealthy Chicago widow even know about Sarasota? Well, it is true. I have vast commercial holdings in Chicago, large ranches and apple orchards in several western states. I could have concentrated my efforts there. But for the power of one advertisement that was run in the Chicago paper in the dead of winter in 1910. It was placed by 2 Sarasota movers and shakers, Joseph Lord and his partner, A.B. Edwards. Let me read you Mr. Lord's words to you, and you'll see how entranced I was before I ever even arrived here. Grapefruit and orange groves, beautiful winter homes, fruit and vegetable lands in famous Sarasota Bay district of Manatee County on the Gulf. Mr. Lord continues, I am one of the largest growers and landowners in Manatee County and can furnish you with any kind or size of property desired. I also improve lands and raise groves for purchasers. Best location in the U.S., he writes, lowest prices, easy terms, call or write for free book and full information. Signed, J.H. Lord. I read that advertisement in a cold and snowy January morning in Chicago, in my castle. And within 1 month, I, my father Henri Honoré, my 2 sons, and my brother Adrian Honoré, who was always our family's trusted financial advisor, traveled from Chicago in a private rail car all the way to the end of the line, Sarasota. Oh yes, I traded the hustle and the bustle of Chicago. In 1910, Chicago had 3 million people for the beauty of the Sarasota Bay District, which I was told at that time had 800 or 900 people. I have jumped in with both feet and with my sleeves rolled up. I now own over a quarter of the Sarasota District, and I am the area's largest and most generous employer. I have a large cattle ranch, which I call Meadow Sweet Pastures, out on the Biaka River. I have a 1,000-acre hog farm right in Osprey, and of course my hogs are prize winners. I have croplands and citrus groves, investment properties, and of course my plant village of Bee Ridge Farms. These are all investments that I have made that I expect will return a handsome profit to myself, to my corporations, and to my family. Oh, yes, Bee Ridge Farms. It's going very, very well, that project. It's a subdivision. I'm selling lots there. Bee Ridge received its post office in 1912 with a little help from my company. I built the Bee Ridge Hotel in 1914, and by 1917, we had a dairy at Proctor and Sawyer Roads, a Seaboard Airline Railroad station, all of our own, where you could get on in Washington, D.C. and come right down to Bee Ridge, and an apartment house, a barber shop, and a store on Harris Street. And of course, all of these buildings were built with lumber from the Palmer Company's sawmill on Gypsy Street. But to make a difference and to make a profit, there must be progress. And here, now, in 1918, progress means one overriding, if you'll forgive the pun, one overriding concern: roads. Manatee County is 1,300 square miles divided into 5 districts. Our district of Sarasota is 52% of that land area. Therefore, of course, we pay just over half of the county taxes. But, and this is the part that causes me such concern, those tax dollars, half of which are collected from Sarasota District, are divided equally amongst the 5. Manatee District, Bradentown, Palmetto, Parish District, and finally Sarasota District. On top of that, 50% of the tax valuation in the Sarasota District is actually paid by my 2 companies. The Palmer Corporation I formed to develop subdivisions, such as the Broadway District on the Bayfront in Sarasota. That's where the Whitaker family settled, about 70 years ago or so. And also the Sarasota Venice Corporation for the vast rural farming and ranching lands that I bought from Joseph Lord and from others. Because of this misdirecting of our tax dollars, I have taken an acute interest in Sarasota's Board of Trade, or Commercial Club as they now fashion themselves. This group, which included Mr. Rankin, my chief salesman for Bee Ridge Farms, my good friend and now Sarasota Mayor, A.B. Edwards, and the energetic Harry Heigl, along with my brother, Adrian Honore, they've put together a bond issue to take for approval to the Manatee County Commissioners, whereby we here in our district would raise our own taxes to pay off the bond with interest. That would raise money to help us build roads and bridges to make this area thrive. What? Adrian has already found ready buyers for these bonds. And the bond issue passed by a 4-to-1 margin, even without the ladies being allowed to register their thoughts on the matter. Well, everyone wants roads, and since I, as the largest landowner in the district, would bear about half of the extra taxes, everyone was looking forward to the prosperity that would occur when we had good roads and bridges between Sarasota and Fruitville and Venice. Well, it seemed we were ready to go until the Manatee County Commissioners hemmed and hawed and didn't approve the bids for work, and then they wanted another election. Seems to us down here in the Sarasota district, they just wanted to gain time to foster development north of us at the Manatee River and the Braden River and all the way out to Anna Maria Island. They wanted folks to buy up there, not down here. What? This so infuriated me that I instructed my solicitors to investigate just what it would take to break away from Manatee County and gain home rule. All those Sarasota district taxes being spent on the 4 other districts. Oh, let me take a sip of my tea here. What? It makes me think of the Boston Tea Party, doesn't it you? Taxation without representation. Yes, indeed. Well, the road building finally did commence. My companies advertised heavily to sell the lots that would be directly on the planned road. And of course, Mr. Harry Heigl, a very energetic gentleman, was working on this as well. Everyone was anticipating that our trunk road, paid for by our very own bond issue, would become a vital link in a new route being planned to take tourists, those potential investors, all the way from Tampa down to Miami. Miami. That has a catchy sound to it, doesn't it? Well, my Broadway subdivision, right on the bay, just north of Sarasota's Main Street, is already profiting from the good roads being built. And Mr. Heigl, well, he's already made a profit. He's been selling sand and shell from his holdings on Siesta Key. Oh, pardon me. He's asking us to call it Siesta Key now. That's an appealing name for folks to buy into. Yes, he's selling sand and shell as fill to be used around the Philippine River so they can build a nice sturdy bridge across there. That's right where my Chicago friends, Edson and Nettie Keith, have built a lovely home. You must go and see it sometime. Yep, yes, that's correct. Many Chicagoans have followed my lead, coming down here to Sarasota and investing. You know, of course, that Owen Burns is from Chicago. He's invested heavily in the land and the buildings and the lots in downtown Sarasota itself. He bought quite a lot from Mr. Gillespie of the Florida Mortgage and Investment Company. I believe that Mr. Burns owns probably 3/4 of the downtown development at this point. I prefer to invest in land myself, but to each her own. Where was I? Oh, yes, the railroad situation. Now that America has joined the war effort in Europe, there simply aren't enough rail cars available to bring all of the raw materials to build roads down here to the Florida Peninsula. To say nothing of the laborers who are now off being soldiers. Our Velvet Highway is progressing, but the 15-foot road that we had envisioned is now merely 9 feet wide. That means that whenever a car meets another going the opposite way, one has to pull off the road to pass. This even happened to me, and I had to wait hours for an oxen team to be found to pull my car out of the sand. Oh, Mrs. Wilson of the Sarasota Times had a great fun with that, putting that in her newspaper. Yes, indeed, I was no longer the Queen of Chicago in her castle, but simply Bertha Palmer of the Sarasota district. Now, I lead by talking, by doing, not just by talking. I lead by doing, not just talking. While all of this is going on, I still need to oversee my investments and those of my family. I would not want to dishonor my beloved husband's memory by sitting still, seated on the sidelines, like so many women my age. Nope, not for me, the rocking chair. Good roads, I repeat, are vital. The key to success for the Sarasota district is good roads. Being able not only to get where you want, but to be able to ship goods from cattle, hogs, to something as mundane as celery, to a market where the fruits of our labors can be turned into money, money for families, and indeed for entire communities. I have personally had roads built at my expense through my property, connecting to existing communities to facilitate travel within this district. You are familiar, no doubt, with some of those roads: Honore Avenue, Lockwood Ridge, Tuttle. Mr. Tuttle is a local man. He's been most helpful with surveying land. Weber, oh, and even Mr. McIntosh, one of my most trusted employees, well, he now has a road with his name on it. I hope that I have shown you that Mrs. Potter Palmer is not only the grande dame of Chicago, the pace setter of London and Paris, but a moving force here in Sarasota. Yes, a pacemaker. That's what I hope to be for what I trust will become, sooner rather than later, Sarasota County. Progress, progress, and perhaps someday soon, why, the United States Congress might even let women vote. Oh, I think, if I may be so bold as to peer into the future, that if the Sarasota district does not pull away from Manatee County, that it will remain forever an undeveloped, sleepy little backwater. And that, my dear friends, would prove that my investment in this area over the past 8 years to be a financial miscalculation on my part. So, yes, I am one who will work to see that this area grows and thrives. I believe that we must all band together, Sarasotans and Ospreyers, those in Nokomis and Laurel and Fruitville and Bee Ridge, and even those several families living around my Venice Railroad depot. Yes, I believe we must band together to make this district, and I hope soon this county, become a prosperous and beautiful place to live. My name is Kate Holmes, and I've been bringing Bertha to life around this region for almost 20 years now. I love making my audience feel that they have stepped back a century into a Sarasota that was so different than what it is today. I am pleased to have had the opportunity through the Venice Area Historical Society to talk with you today. My home base, as it were, is the Historical Society of Sarasota County. Let me tell you the end of Bertha's story. Bertha Matilda Honoré Palmer died in 1918 at the age of 69 at her beloved home, The Oaks, in Osprey, Florida. She was surrounded by her family. While her body was taken to Chicago to be buried next to her husband, Potter, in Graceland Cemetery, her legacy continued to be as strong as ever. Her two sons, Honoré and Potter II, and her brother Adrian, remained active and involved in Sarasota. Today, you can see the Palmer influence throughout our county. In a time before women were fully enfranchised, she was known first for her charm and her tact, and then for the fact that somehow her charm and her tact became the driver of her and her family's success. How successful was this 19th century woman? The $8 million that Potter Palmer left his wife on his death in 1902 became, under Bertha Palmer's guidance in the 16 years before her death, almost 4 times that. This production of Mrs. Palmer discussing her thoughts on the future formation of Sarasota County has been brought to you by the Venice Area Historical Society. Kate Holmes, presenter, can be reached through the Historical Society of Sarasota County. Thank you, and be sure to love and care for Sarasota County.